traders. Have you seen this video?
I guess what I'm going to talk about is the psychology behind creating consistency in your trading. And an interesting thing that I found even about 3 weeks ago, I did a presentation in Toronto. And there were probably about 100 people in the room. And I was really kind of amazed at how many people really didn't have a definition of what consistency was. Just think about it for a second. That they really didn't know, what does it mean to really create consistency? Like when I asked the question to the audience, nobody really could answer the question. What is consistency? I mean, if you're going to create it, if it's something that you're going to manifest in your life, I mean, or in your trading, it certainly has to be something that you know what it means. You have to know the parameters of it. And simply, I'm just going to simply define consistency as, as a nice, steadily rising equity curve. That's all. Just a nice, steadily rising equity curve, okay, at a nice, say, 45-degree angle. Will that equity curve have any drawdowns? Yeah. But what kind of drawdowns? Small drawdowns. Small drawdowns that reflect any trading system or methodology or any particular way in which you decide to trade, the kind of losses that you will experience as a result of being a trader. It's a natural part of the business that we will have small drawdowns. But what isn't consistency are the kind of, let's say, a kind of equity curve that looks like this, with a huge drawdown, and build it right back up again, another huge drawdown, build it back up, and another huge drawdown. Now, most traders who don't understand the nature of trading or the nature of the psychology behind what it means to be consistent, they will attribute these huge drawdowns to something that happened in the market. They'll always try to find a reason to determine what is it about what the market did on this particular day or in this particular trade or whatever series of trades created this huge drawdown that caused that to happen. And then go on a search to find what it is. What I'm going to establish, hopefully today in the next 2 hours, is that those huge drawdowns are not the result of something you did not know about the market. They are not the result of something you did not know about the market. They are the result of something you didn't know about yourself. And there are ways to prevent that. And those ways to prevent it are what it means to really create a nice, steadily rising equity curve. And those ways basically fall into 4 general categories. None of this is, by the way, none of this material is in that book. So there's no point in looking. I just didn't want you to waste your time. There's no material in the book. You've got the videotape. I mean, come on. So you just need to sit back and listen. Anyway, so we got 4 basic categories. One is that you have to have an edge. In other words, you have to know enough about the nature of the market and how it moves, so that you can determine when there's a higher probability of one thing happening over another. That's how I'm defining an edge. When there's a higher probability of one thing happening over another. And then the next category is that you have to learn how to think in the market's perspective. I just simply, as a heading, would say that you have to learn how to think in probabilities. Now this is really can be a, this is really kind of where most traders have their, let's say, have the greatest amount of difficulty. And first, in recognizing what it is, what it means to think in probabilities, and then once they recognize it, implementing some process or series of steps where they're actually retraining their mind to think in probabilities. Now, this is what I'm going to spend most of the time on in the next 2 hours. And just before I even get into it, just so you kind of have a little bit of a background, is that our minds do not naturally think that way. Our minds don't naturally process information in a way that will cause us to, let's say, be in harmony with or have, let's say, be in correspondence with the nature of the way the market exists. And so we have to do something very specific to train our minds to think in probabilities if we want to create consistency. The third category is all the, let's say, conflicting energy that exists inside of us. I'm saying conflicting energy, conflicting beliefs, or whatever that would argue against us accumulating vast sums of money as a trader. Now, what kind of things am I talking about? Anybody have any ideas of what I might be talking about?
Just a general belief system.
A general belief system. What's that? Go ahead.
Say a general belief system maybe from childhood.
A general belief system about childhood, but can you think of anything specific?
Self-doubt.
Self-doubt? Well, okay, but anything more specific than that even?
Filthy rich.
Filthy rich. Now look at the word filthy and rich. Okay? Where does that word filthy come from? It can come from a number of different sources, but what people have to understand is that we grow up. We can grow up. We don't say we do grow up. We can grow up with any number of things that we've learned throughout our lives that are going to fall into the category of what I'm going to just say are self-sabotaging beliefs. In many cases, they're religious-based beliefs. Because essentially as traders, what are we doing? We're basically taking money from other people with no services rendered. That's basically what we're doing as traders. And there are a lot of religious beliefs that let's say that would really rail against the idea of doing something like taking money away from other people with no services rendered. And so as a result of, we build up our skills, we build up our knowledge about the nature of trading, we get better and better at it, and all of a sudden find ourselves, or maybe not in the moment find ourselves, but when we look back and with a little bit of introspection and say, why did this happen? We make trading errors. Errors that cause these kinds of drawdowns. Sometimes it can be simple ones. Like even a buy for a sell. I did it just the other day. It didn't create a huge loss because I caught it, but the point is that if I wasn't conscious of what I was doing and why I was doing it in the moment, I could have very easily let that trade go, and it could have been more than what I anticipated. And the problem is that when we experience these kind of drawdowns, they create psychological damage. They create the kind of psychological damage that's very difficult to recover from. Or it can be difficult depending on one's skill level and being able to do so. And what kind of psychological damage am I talking about? The lack of self-trust. We don't trust ourselves anymore. And when we don't trust ourselves to do what we need to do when we need to do it without any reservation, without any hesitation, what ends up happening is that we end up generating fear. And what we're going to find out in a little bit is that fear has a very insidious effect on our ability to be objective and see what the market is offering us in any given moment. Because we can define the market as this kind of never-ending opportunity flow. And the market's is basically giving us an opportunity in any given moment to get in, add to, detract from, or get out. But it's this never-ending flow. Now, if we're not perceiving it as this never-ending flow, the market's not causing us to perceive it that way. It's what's going on inside of us that's causing us to perceive it as something other than this never-ending opportunity flow. And those are the kinds of internal forces that cause these kind of drawdowns. That's the third area. The fourth area is learning, let's say, building a specific kind of mental framework that will allow you to recognize when you've crossed through the threshold of euphoria, so let's say from normal confidence to overconfidence, or from normal confidence to a state of euphoria. In other words, there is what I'm going to call a psychological threshold. Below this threshold, you're just confident. Once you pass through it, you're in a state of euphoria. And why would being in a state of euphoria be a problem? What's that? Loss of objectivity. Anything else? Feeling invincible. Why is feeling invincible a problem when you're interacting with the market? Everybody understands the implications? In other words, when you've crossed the threshold into a state of mind of euphoria, it is impossible to perceive risk. That is the nature of euphoria. In other words, the nature of euphoria is that from our individual perspective, from the perspective of our state of mind, in that state of mind, it would be impossible for me to perceive that anything can happen other than what I expect to happen. Anything. The only thing that's going to happen is what I expect to happen. And as a result of being so absolutely sure that what I expect to happen is going to happen, what would be the next step in this process? To break my money management rules, right? In other words, to put on a position that would be much larger than what I would normally trade. Maybe 10 times, maybe 20. Well, there's no risk. Why not? Right? Why not? Now, the problem, of course, with putting on an inordinately large position is that it doesn't take very much movement for the market to put you to put you in a huge losing trade. And the problem there is that if I've got this huge position on with being absolutely positive that it's going to work, and then the market just goes against me by just a little bit, I can go from this state of euphoria, from this state of, let's say, in essence, heaven on earth, to a state of extreme agony and pain of hell on earth virtually instantaneously. Can I not? And then once I get into this state of mind right here, I will be in mind freeze. My mind will freeze up. I'll be, let's say, paralyzed to do anything, and I just sit and watch as the market takes my money away. Until something snaps inside of my mind, so okay, that's enough, and I get out. And then I look back at my equity, and I see one of these huge drawdowns, okay, and I think, oh my God, how did that happen? Now, if you don't understand the underlying dynamics of what I've just talked about, you're gonna go look at the market, and you're gonna try to find what happened in the market that caused that. What set of variables, what set of market variables caused that to happen? You see, the market didn't have anything to do with it. Nothing. To create consistency, in essence, what we have to do is learn how to trade without making errors. Does that make sense to everybody? Right? But then what is a trading error? Okay, if that's the case, everyone said, did everyone nod their head? Yes, yes, okay. We're not, okay. It makes sense, right? To create consistency, I have to reach higher and higher levels of error-free trading, right? There's a correlation there. In other words, everyone sees the correlation, right? But then if I said, okay, what are trading errors? List them. What? Not following your rules is a trading error. Okay, good. See, but these are things you should be able to, well, right off the top of your head, right? You guys are all in the business of trading. Every single one of you would probably say, yes, my goal is to create consistent results. If I said, what do you want? What's your objective? What are you trying to accomplish here? Well, I want consistency. And yet if we just established that consistency is a function of lack of errors, you should be able to rattle off those errors right off the top of your head so that you can recognize them when you're making them. Right? What's the biggest error that virtually all traders make? Except for the ones who have gotten to the point where they don't make them anymore. What's the biggest number one error that traders make? What? No. I know I'm right. Okay. Yeah. And so but see, I know I'm right. But how does I know I'm right manifest itself into a trading error? What?
Not exiting so that you can take what you see as the next correct signal, and you can't take it because you're locked in the wrong position and you did not exit.
I'll agree with everything he said. I'm just going to say it a little bit differently. What's that? Yeah. Not predefining your risk. Everything we just said, I'm just going to say it a little bit differently. Not predefining your risk. Now, I'm not going to ask people to raise their hands, but I bet there are people in this room who still will get into a trade without predefining their risk. Now, why won't people predefine their risk? Why is that so hard to do? Why do you think that's so hard to do? What do you think the underlying dynamics are? Well, yeah, you don't want to be wrong. Now, see, when you've learned to think in probabilities, what you're going to learn, what you're going to understand, is that trading is not a right or wrong endeavor. It has nothing to do with being right or wrong. But this is really important. Yes, we don't want to be wrong, and we don't want to lose money. And there's a problem here in terms of the way our minds are designed to think. If I think of trading, getting into a trade, as being something I can be right or wrong about, and I have not accepted the risk, meaning I have not accepted the dollar value of the potential loss that I can incur from that trade by not predefining it, or by predefining it still not accepting it, then my mind has the potential to associate whatever's happening in the market now with something that's happened in my past. Meaning our minds are wired to associate. Meaning that if I haven't changed the way that I think about trading, I have the potential to look at any given trade as, well, let's say any given trade has the potential to tap me into the accumulated emotional pain of what it means to be wrong, or every time I've been wrong in my life.
Personalized.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to say that again. If I haven't redefined trading to think about it in the appropriate way, based on the way that I'm going to explain in a moment, being wrong on a trade has the potential to tap me into the accumulated pain of every time I've been wrong in my life, because that's the way our minds are designed to think. They're designed to associate.